All right, welcome everybody to the Rocklin Town Hall. Thank you for coming on a Friday night to hear about politics. Gold star for you. Tonight we are honored to have a discussion with Rocklin City Council candidates Matthew Oliver and David Bass. My name is Taryn Abella. I'm with the American Council Foundation, and myself and John Jackson, Dr. John Jackson, president of William Jessup, will be co-hosting this evening. Before we get into tonight's discussion, I just want to provide a little house cleaning and expectations for the crowd, those watching online, and then also with our candidates tonight. You guys submitted 150 something questions. Kudos to you. We have 9. And so based on the time tonight, the candidates have agreed to the questions. Myself and Dr. John Jackson, because of time, picked the 9 most pressing and relevant questions. So if you don't hear your question, it's not because it wasn't a good question, but because of time, we had to constrain it. The format tonight will look something like this. At the beginning, each candidate will get a 3-minute opening statement in which they'll talk about their how long they've grown up in Rocklin, their experience, and while they're running. And then there will be a series of 9 questions that Dr. Jackson will facilitate. This is not a debate. This is a town hall. There will not be a back and forth between the candidates. They will be answering questions in a 3-minute segment for each question. After those 9 questions have been asked, each candidate will be given 5 minutes in a closing statement. Here are the expectations for you in the crowd. This is going to be a civil evening. This is not going to be a loud evening. So, when you hear something that you really disagree with, it is not permission to yell and heckle and laugh. When you hear something you like, it's not permission to get up and scream and yell. If you interrupt or disturb the evening, you will be asked to leave. We want to make sure that this is civil, this is respectful, and we give both candidates equal opportunity to discuss their platform and where they stand on important issues facing Rocklin. Are we all on the same page with code of conduct? Yes? All right. Well, without further ado, I will have Dr. John Jackson begin the evening.
Thank you so much, Tanner, and it's a delight to welcome you here to William Jessup University. Because this is our house, I'm going to do what our tradition is. We're going to start with a very brief word of prayer. Would you mind praying with me? Our Heavenly Father, thank you for your presence in this room. We just pray for a great civil evening. Thank you for Matthew and for Dave, and thank you for their commitment to this community. We pray that tonight will be conducted in a way that honors you and helps our city to grow, to become even a better place in which to raise our kids, have our families, and have a wonderful experience that we've had in leading up to this point. We ask all this in your name. Amen. Okay, so we had not an arm wrestling contest in the back, but we did, and we didn't flip a coin. What we did do is we picked a number, and we're going to start with opening statements. First opening statement will be Dave, followed then by Matthew. These are 3-minute opening statements.
Thank you. Are we on? There we are. Sorry. Thank you for everyone for coming tonight. So I've been in the community with my wife for 13 years. We came up after we got out of the United States Coast Guard and brought up with us my son and my mother-in-law. And when we came up here, the intent was to raise our family, like most people that move up here. I ended up using my GI Bill to go to law school at night while I worked during the day. My first job after getting out of law school was at the DA's office, and then eventually I went off to the AG's office as well. During that time, I started my service towards Rocklin and to Placer County. First, I started by forming the Rocklin Police Activities League with various police officers and the chief of police. We have been maintaining that organization for quite some time. I also joined the Chamber of Commerce. I'm now the vice chair of the chamber. I'm also a Rotarian, and I was a planning commissioner, and I relinquished that position when I started running for Rocklin City Council. And the reason that I'm running is basically because I want to continue the tradition of leadership that I've had and I've actually been mentored in. I know the city council well, and I think that I have the personality and the characteristic traits to continue to represent the city, being a part of the city council. So I just want to basically run to keep Rocklin the way that it is and use my knowledge and experience to protect the things that we love here. So thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you very much. Dave Bass. Matthew Oliver.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Dr. John Jackson, the American Council, the Rocklin community for coming out this evening and being a part. My wife and I as well, we've been married 23 years, have 5 kids. And we moved into the area about 12 years ago. And we moved into the area for the reason I hear most people moved into the area, because of the schools. And we love those schools, by the way. I started this campaign running on the idea of advocating for our faith, freedoms, and family, all of which have been attacked during this campaign. And I've seen and experienced firsthand what happens when a politician oversteps their roles and attacks our liberty and strips us of our rights. And I've stood up and I've advocated for those rights, both at the Capitol and locally. But it wasn't until I talked to Amanda and I heard her desperate plea for honesty and accountability in the city council. It wasn't until I talked to Casey, an educator, who was looking for local leadership and somebody that would represent her, or Wendy, who just wanted her kids to get back into school and play sports again. It's then that I knew that Rocklin had experienced good stewardship, but what we are in need of right now is great leadership. Leadership that is willing to tackle the uncomfortable task of taking on PG&E and their ever-rising prices and their abuse locally. Bold leadership that is willing to cut the pet projects so that we can put the needs of the people first. Decisive leadership that is willing to confront the establishment and also some feathers so we can weather this current recession and record high gas prices that is affecting our community. I didn't wait for an election to be a leader. I was that leader when I stood up to the governor and his hypocritical mandates, his rules for thee but not for me. I was that leader when I attended school board meetings and advocated for parents, students, and teachers. I was that leader when I stood shoulder to shoulder with doctors and nurses, and they fought and won the right to choose what goes into their bodies. And I was that leader when I signed exemptions for our police and firefighters who risk their lives for us daily. The last thing Rocklin needs right now is another politician creating excuses for why they can't get the job done. I will stand, I will advocate and fight, and I will restore the voice of the people. And I'm honored to be that leader for Rocklin.
Thank you very much. We'll go to our first question. I'm going to rotate these in order. And Matthew, since you were second on the opening statement, I'm going to make you be first on the first question. And I think you referred to this. What would you do to address electricity costs and options in Rocklin?
Well, that question comes as no surprise. The majority of the homes that I've visited have said that this is one of their top issues. Paying 5 times higher electricity prices on PG&E than our neighbors in Roseville on Roseville Electric. And I've been asked in many different forums about affordable housing. But what's the point of affordable housing if the house they're living in is not affordable? We cannot continue to push off onto tomorrow what we know we can do today. This burden and this bullying by PG&E will be paid for by our children and their children. But our children and future generations deserve better. So here, in 2019, our current city council refused to even launch an investigation to look at the options for Rocklin. KCRA3 reported on then Mayor Joe Patterson. They said Patterson called on the Rocklin City Council and proposed looking into other options for power providers, including partner with nearby Roseville Electric. KCRA reported the council voted against it and opted to stay with PG&E. Patterson was quoted saying, "Most residents seemed willing to want us to take leadership." Instead, there was no leadership. Oh, but in 2020, they commissioned a private consultant, and In his closing comments, he said this: the last option is taking no action. It has no immediate financial costs on the city government. The question comes how strongly the community feels these costs and what the corresponding political will is. What is our political will? It is time for the people of Rocklin to say that we are fed up and to take bold steps that are needed to break free and stand up to the bully of PG&E. I believe that what we need to do is what our former mayor, Joe Patterson, said. Look at all the possible options. Over and over, when I go to homes and I knock on doors, people are saying, we need to look at all the options. What are the additional options? Listen, if we are willing to ask our residents to pay for a tax when they take their kids camping, we should be willing to ask our residents if they are willing to stand up to PG&E and make a change.
Thank you. Dave, the question is, what would you do to address electricity costs and options in Rocklin?
Thank you. So I think we have to level set a bit, especially when it comes to what the options are. This is the report that was just referred to, and a lot was skipped over that it was just explained to you. The problem is that going the route that was just basically laid out for you would pretty much bankrupt Rocklin. The devil's in the details, okay? If you want to, for example, go the route of San Joaquin Irrigation District, they spent $27.5 million since 2016 going the litigation route. Or you can go YOLO, which offered $1.2 billion to PG&E, and PG&E told them to go pound sand. If you want, I have a couple copies. I'm more than happy to send this out because Joe Patterson read it, and Joe Patterson and the rest of the city council made the same exact decision that it was not financially feasible at that time. So we can get up here and anger as much people as we want about getting at PG&E. The fact is that sometimes the problem is at the state level. It is not for one city at 72,000 of a population with $100 million for their annual budget to spend $1 to $2 million each year annually fighting with PG&E. We need leadership, but we need to work with leadership at the state level to be able to get somewhere with this. Our last opportunity was when PG&E went bankrupt. And yes, the state should have acted. Yes, the governor should have acted. This isn't Rocklin pushing things off to anybody. This is actually listening to consultants, reading reports, the whole thing, not just the end, and actually looking at the facts. If you want to bankrupt Rocklin just to punch PG&E in the face, go for it. But I don't think when most people actually look at the facts that that's what they want. Now, what are our options? Sure, we have options for trying to increase storage because we do have rolling blackout issues. What we also have is Pioneer. That's called a community choice aggregator. We have that option, but the problem is that you're still transmitting all of your electricity over PG&E lines, so there's a carrying cost. Now, in 2019, that exact same time when there was that study happening, guess what all of those city council members did? They stopped Pioneer from increasing rates by 17%. That's really important to know. The city council was working. I'm not here to be an apologist for the city council, but I know how hard they're working on this issue. I also know how difficult it is, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you a fantasy. Okay? You're not going to be able to take on PG&E alone unless you want to bankrupt the city and spend every single discretionary penny we have, rather spending it on schools, rather than spending it on public defense or public property rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want 1 minute? Yeah.
It's interesting because the report is a full report. It just appears that we took the only advice at the very end of it, which was do nothing. And this is a state level issue. And I'm somebody who stood up at a state level and challenged the governor and won. And I believe that we can stand up again. What I don't want to do is keep making excuses. There are more options, more possibilities that are out there for us. And I'm tired of politicians throwing out numbers, 28 billion, 2.5 billion. The reality is we don't know what that is. We could throw out numbers all day long and just make excuses for why we haven't taken action. But what I do know is what my PG&E bill is every single month. And that is something that I don't want to continue to see going up, and it is. And when we have more fires like the mosquito fire breaking out, caused by PG&E, our children and our grandchildren will be paying for it. Let's stand up, let's make a difference because we can.
Next question. Dave, you start this one. How would you address homelessness in Rocklin? And do you support the Gathering Inn Campus of Hope homeless shelter? Two-part question.
Thank you. So I think that the first piece is how to address homelessness. I think that we have a very fortunate situation in the sense that though we do have a homeless problem, we're always going to have a homeless problem. We're never going to be able to 100% wipe it out. Is that we have a manageable population of unhoused individuals that our police and our health services is able to service and get to know those individuals. We do have fortunate partners, and we want to continue to embolden those partners, continue to funnel money into these programs that we have to be able to meet temporary housing needs. We should increase the amount of transitional housing that we do have. Affordable housing is a big part of that, making sure that we have ultra-low income housing so that people that are on that bubble of about to lose their homes or their housing can stay in there, and then we can provide money through transitional funding. That is something that we do through Kids First, something that we've done through St. Vincent de Paul. We have wonderful partnerships that we need to continue to foster with the Gathering Inn. I think that not enough credit is given to the police force because they do a great job with our current unhoused population, and we are going to be increasing the amount of outreach we do in terms of 1 day a week being able to provide them with health services and going to them as opposed to busing them somewhere to be able to get those services. So those are the increase of services that we need to do. Now, as far as the Campus of Hope, I will say I am against the Campus of Hope as currently designed. We have 50 to 63 individuals that are unhoused. That's a 600 to 700 unit campus. I think that it's not right-sized for the area. I do understand that overall we have about 600 unhoused individuals within Placer County. However, that is within Placer County, not just within Roseville and Rocklin. And let's face it, that is going to be a Roseville and Rocklin issue. That's what the Rocklin PD is worried about. That's what Roseville PD is worried about. That's what the sheriff is worried about. And it's what our community is worried about. And I know that I can be branded as a NIMBY. I'm fine with that. It's not because of that. It's because the only thing that I've seen, and this isn't a ding on the Gathering Inn because they are a phenomenal organization. But all I've seen is a 2-minute video. I haven't really gotten to see how the finances are going to work. And when it comes to one-time grant funding, it scares me because where is the money going to come from to continue to fund that? And just saying that, well, it'll come because they'll keep asking for grant funding isn't good enough for me. It's a public safety issue for me, and I want to see more details before I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Matthew, the question is, how would you address homelessness in Rocklin? And then do you support the Gathering Inn Campus of Hope homeless shelter?
Well, I appreciate the question. I want to take a moment and say thank you to the Gathering Inn for their devotion to our community, to Dave and Keith for their willingness to do something. I haven't seen all the details of the Gathering Inn, or for the Campus of Hope, and I agree that I think more time and interest should be taken in looking over that project. I also know that it hasn't actually been proposed yet to the Placer County Board of Supervisors. But the question is, what would we do to address homelessness? When I asked this question and I sat down with all of our current city council members, they said, what homeless problem? Wait, what? What homeless problem? They said, well, compared to Roseville, we don't have a homeless problem. Well, that I have a problem with. See, my oldest son, Austin, was homeless when he came into our lives. And everyone deserves compassion and dignity and the opportunity of a roof over their head. As a minister for over 23 years, reaching the broken and the downtrodden, I understand the value of a hand up, not just a hand out. And I have seen the transformation of love and care that a community can bring. But if there is one person, I don't want a manageable homeless problem. If there's one person, then we have a problem. But we wouldn't have this question here tonight and been asked this question if people didn't feel there was a problem. Recently, my 17-year-old son on his way to get the mail found 2 needles in the gutter. I visited another home just the other day, and they pointed out in the green belt behind them a tent that's erected with a homeless person living in it. There's a problem. So what do we do with it? Well, first, my dad always told me the first step to dealing with a problem is admitting there's a problem. We have to admit there's a problem. And our city council has decided to be reactive, and it's time for us to be proactive. This idea of call us if you see a homeless person and we'll deal with it is not a proactive approach. We don't need more reviews. We don't need more reports and committees. We need to do something. I want to partner with the likes of Mayor Hawley, happy birthday, Mayor Hawley, by the way, from Lincoln, who has made the bold steps to address these issues and seen their population reduced by 30%. And when I talked to her today, she said that's not good enough. They have plans to take it even further. And I want to work with Roseville and Loomis and not sue our local cities, but work together. And the Placer County. Because if Roseville has a problem, we have a problem. And it's time to address the problem.
Thank you. Question number 3, we'll start with you, Matthew. On the ballot in November for Rocklin residents will be Measure F, which is a hotel and lodging tax measure. This measure will increase transient occupancy tax from 8% to 10%, providing an estimated $300,000 annually. Do you support this measure, and why or why not?
Well, it's clear. Measure F is an attack on families, on businesses, and our community. Don't be fooled that it's a tax rate that's only going up by 2%. A 2% rate increase is a 25% tax increase to the taxpayer. During record high inflation and worldwide recession, we are proposing a tax increase, and we don't even know why. When I asked, I was told again because Roseville's doing it. Well, we cannot put this burden on our community just because Roseville's doing it. I talked to a mother the other day. Her name was Josie. She has multiple kids. She lives in this area, works in this area. Right now, she is living at a local hotel because she can't qualify for the loan for her housing yet. She told me that this increase would cause her to be homeless. And this isn't just an increase of tax, but this is an expansion of tax to include camping and campsites. This also keeps Rocklin from being competitive and having a business advantage that we seldom have. And why are we doing this? Rocklin had a 50.6% increase in revenue from 2015 to 2021. A 50% increase. We have to ask ourselves, is this a revenue problem or is this a spending problem? Just like the first responder tax that is double dipping and it's taking from our residents a second time when they call 911. These monies go to a general fund that's used for all sorts of pet projects by our city council members. How about we address the mess at the Quarry Park Adventures that went way over budget, that cost the taxpayers, you and I, over $13 million and is still costing us money today? Now, we've lost the voice of the people, and it's time that we get it back.
Thank you, Dave. The question is, on the ballot in November for Rocklin residents will be Measure F, which is a hotel and lodging tax measure. This measure will increase transient occupancy tax from 8% to 10%, providing an estimated $300,000 annually. Do you support this measure? Why or why not?
Thank you. So I don't support the measure. I saw a hit piece recently that said I did, so I'm here to tell you that's not true. I don't. What I do support is it being on the ballot. I think that all taxes should be on the ballot because I think that we need to continue to have these very conversations. I think everything that was just said is actually really valid. We need to be discussing how much money is being spent. We need to live within our means. Why am I against it? One, because I actually do not believe we should be raising taxes right now. But that's me. I think everybody here should be able to discuss that. So it should be put on the ballot. Fee increases, taxes, I do believe we should be voting on them. That's just my personal belief. I do understand why we have it though. And I don't think that it is because of any hyperbolic reason. It's because the police and fire both support it, because there is a strain that occurs on the hotels when we have visitors. That said, I don't think that's enough of a justification. I also agree with my opponent fundamentally when other jurisdictions do something that we then maybe join in. I do not agree with that either, because I don't like the parity argument, because it ultimately leads to kind of the boiling frog, right? We're going to just eventually be meeting up with our neighbors, and then all of a sudden we're taxed way too much. So that's my personal reason for why I'm against it. I will say, I did hear that there was, an issue of if you have transitional housing. I do believe after 30 days there's an issue with there not being that tax. I'd have to check on that, but I'm pretty sure that's been written into the law. So there are some wiggle room for some of those exigent circumstances, but ultimately I am not for the tax, and I'm not for any raising of taxes based on because it's being done somewhere else. I'm not going to address the other issues. I think that there is a lot of information out there for everyone to educate yourself, to get the full story, and there's definitely a bigger story to a lot of what was just said.
Okay. Thank you. Dave, you'll get the first, question number 4, you'll be first to respond. How will you build consensus, respect, and understanding as a city council member?
Thank you. So I feel like I already have, in the sense that I've already laid the foundation to understand our current city council, understand our city workers, understand outside of just Rocklin. I work constantly with people in the chambers, the various chambers. I work with various police departments. I did when I was a DA. I did when I was an attorney general. I generally, in my job, that's all I do is actually build consensus. Usually in multi-party litigation, somebody has to walk into the room because you have 20 very egotistical lawyers, and I'm usually the one trying to bring them all to the table and try and build some type of consensus, and it's very difficult, especially with lawyers. If you know any, we have very big egos usually. So I know how to work in a tribal environment. I know how to work with people that don't necessarily get along. I can tell you that whether it's a Democrat or Republican, Libertarian, whether they're pro one way or the other, I'm generally going to be able to work with them and find out what is important to them and make sure that they're heard. I do that in negotiations, I do that in settlement, I do that at the chamber, I do that in all the boards that I'm a part of. And I know I can do it with this city council because I know they respect me, I respect them, even though we disagree, and we do disagree, but that's healthy. That's a good thing. We should be disagreeing. But I know when I disagree with everyone, they're going to listen to me, I'm going to listen to them, and they don't have to worry that I'm going to go out later and put them on blast because I didn't agree with them.
Thank you. Matthew, the question is, how will you build consensus, respect, and understanding as a city council member?
I appreciate the question. First, you always become friends with the sound guy, and that's so important. Otherwise, you mute your mic. Well, I've been called many times the voice of the people. I've also been called a rebel. I've heard of other leaders called that as well. But wouldn't we all prefer a mean tweet right now and lower gas prices? The reality, in 2016, Joe Patterson ran for Rocklin City Council. He ran against the old guard and the establishment. He was aggressive. He confronted them publicly. He went much further than I have. And now he is supported and endorsed by all the current city council members. See, what I have shown is that I can work with people that I disagree with. As a business owner, I've led the way partnering and working with other businesses that some people would call competitors. And I learned to find a way to say, how can we work together through the toughest times to be successful? My dad always told me, unity is not about agreeing on everything, but unity is learning to stand on what we agree on. I know that the current city council can do it because I've seen them do it before. And I'm just hoping that they will be willing to give me that same chance. Yes, I will bring transparency. Yes, I'll bring accountability and honesty. And yes, I know that that can be uncomfortable sometimes. But I do believe that we all love Rocklin, and we can stand on that together.
Thank you. Matthew, the next question is for you. Question number 5. How will you manage responsible growth in Rocklin?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Question number 5 is, how will you manage responsible growth in Rocklin?
Less roundabouts. I just want to hear you say it twice so I can tell you that. Just kidding. We have some issues here. Rocklin is in a unique place where we're almost fully built out with our current plan. How do we make sure that new development doesn't change the character and quality of life of Rocklin? My opponent, well, he's endorsed and has taken money from those builders. He's been on the planning committee, and though he missed 25% of the meetings and only attended 6, they liked him enough and saw what they liked and decided to fund him. I'm not endorsed by those builders. In fact, I'm not endorsed by any of those builders. I'm endorsed and supported by this community and these people. I will have a focus on engaging residents and making sure the voice of residents is heard. And that we don't fall into the same trap that other cities have done, where we blindly follow state mandates and don't do what's in the best interest of our community. Standing up to the agenda of the builders is like standing up to the governor. I'm willing to do both, and my opponent wasn't even willing to vote in the recall. These are important issues. Our community matters, showing up matters, advocating matters, and I want to engage the community and give us back our voice.
Thank you. David, the question number 5 is, how will you manage responsible growth in Rocklin?
Thank you. And I appreciate the hit right there about the BIA. I believe my interview was right after Matthew's, so I apologize you didn't get the endorsement. It sounds like spilt milk to me, and that's just too bad, because the fact is that in these interviews you go up and you actually have to speak to the issues, and they decide who's going to actually represent Rocklin and see to it that the building is done responsibly. Now, maybe they liked him a little bit and they liked me a little more. Who cares? The fact is that it's really hypocritical to get up on this stage and tell you that I'm somehow bought when he was in the interview right before me. Okay? That's transparency right there. Now, here's what I'll tell you what I will do. Here's what I care about. I care about Clover Valley. Okay? I care about making sure we preserve as much of that as possible. That is something that I care about. I care about affordable housing. I care that we have the right amount and we are not changing the character of Rocklin, but at the same time we're meeting state mandates. That was the question you were asked, not about my voting. We were asked about what is the growth in Rocklin and how do we manage it responsibly. We have Sierra College. We need to make sure that we're getting the most out of those development agreements. I know how to do that. I know real estate law. I know development. And I will tell you this, you are able to get to your meetings without having to be there present. Now, it's fine. It's fine. We can play with numbers. Remember what my opponent said about numbers, right? But at the end of the day, it's about whether or not we are going to provide the city and the citizens with an answer to how much development we are going to have and how is that development going to affect us. Are we going to connect trails? Are we going to let the developers roll over us? And let me tell you, I was the only vote against developers after meeting with the developers and not getting to see a single citizen until the meeting, and I still voted with the citizens. I am not bought and sold. That's transparency.
Thank you. We'll give you 1 minute, Matthew.
Please. I somehow got my son's peanut butter sandwich on my notes here. I went to every opportunity to meet with everybody I possibly could to find as many answers as I possibly could find. A lot of them I didn't get even invited to, like the unions, because they already knew where I was going to go, like the police union and the fire union, who didn't even bother to take time to talk to me and just went ahead and endorsed my opponent. But when I met with these builders, I did give them answers. Answers that said, I'm not going to go along with what the builders want just because the builders want it. Answers that put the people first. And I love the fact that my opponent wants to come up and tout his record and what he's done with the planning committee. I have gone from door to door over and over again and met with so many people who are so frustrated. Now you know where to be frustrated. He's sitting there.
I'm going to give you 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, just to let you know, you can reach out to any group and they will give you an audience. The fact that the firefighters union is being told that they purposely didn't give an audience, I can't wait to tell them about that, because that would actually challenge their C4 status. It would not be right for them to say no to anybody. So sometimes you got to go knock on that door. Second, no, I said enough. Thanks.
Okay. Question number 6. Dave, you'll be the first one on this. Question is, what do you see as the top priority for the Rocklin community?
Right. I think that the top priority is, first and foremost, it's going to be public safety, and it's going to be quality of life. That stems from that public safety. I think that most people, when they come up here and they see clean streets and they see a life where kids can play outside and we have a ton of parks, they know that this is a place, and of course we're voted consistently #1 in various magazines, whatever it is, that quality of life is massive, but it starts with public safety. And I think that's the #1 issue in the community overall. Now, we are blessed. We have an amazing leadership in our law enforcement, and we need to continue to support them. We have a new Sheriff Wayne Wu, who is a phenom in his own right, has recently endorsed me. We have Chief Rustin Banks, which we just hired. We have a brand new DA. All of them are working overtime to make sure that we're safe. We're going to continue to support them, continue to support the different task forces that they put together, so that we're working as a community to ensure that there's public safety. And I, with my law enforcement background, am going to make sure that they have everything that they need to do what they need to do. But at the end of the day, we are looking at families and making sure that they are flourishing, making sure that they have recreation, making sure that they have the opportunities to go from one park to the other. I mean, here we have in 1 mile from every doorstep, we have parks, okay? We want to make sure that every single one of those parks, every single one of the recreational opportunities that we're providing are accessible to every family, and making sure that Rocklin stays the #1 place to live in California. I think that's what most people are concerned about in the community, and we only got to that point because of the amazing leadership that's come before us. I want to continue with that tradition.
Thank you. Matthew, the question is, number 6, what do you see as a top priority for the community?
That's a great question. You know, I love the idea that we have these parks. I love the idea of safety. And I love the idea of creating more task force, except for when Joe Patterson proposed creating a community traffic advisory committee, our city council shot that down and said no. A chance for the people to be able to speak into what's going on in our community, to be a part of those task force, and our city council said no. I absolutely think one of the top priorities we need is to restore the voice of the people. We have a city council that's done what they want, an establishment that's been here for far too long, and they're desperately trying to hold on to control. But I believe the people deserve a voice. And right now, when I get on to Rocklin City Council, I will propose that we have residents active in all parts of our decision making. We shouldn't be afraid of our community. We need to be reminded that we work for the people. The city does not belong to the council members. It belongs to the residents.
Thank you. Question number 7 begins with you, Matthew. The question, a little more specific, how will you support local schools, Parks and Rec, and police? How will you support local schools, Parks and Rec, and police?
Do we get 15 minutes for this one?
3 minutes.
We can actually do it quickly. I went to school board meetings throughout the region and advocated for our teachers and students. Not because I was running for a campaign, but because I was doing what was right. Again, being proactive, not reactive. Leadership is not about a position. It's about taking action and standing up for what is right. Our school boards have been attacked over and over again. Front pages of the Sacramento Bee, and our city council was nowhere in sight. They took a beating. These school board members, they're just moms and dads that have doing the best they can, fighting to get our schools open, and our city council sat back while I was there supporting them and advocating for them. Right now, Two of the most vile school board candidates support, have funded, and endorsed my opponent. Rick Miller has advocated for inappropriate content to be taught to our youngest and most vulnerable, and he fought to close our schools. And on the support of our police, public safety is a top priority. But when our new police chief, Rustin Banks, asked for 6 new police officers to help with these homeless issues, traffic, maintaining our safety, our city council gave him 2. Where did all that money go from the first responder fee? The reality, we need to cut pet projects from the city council and support our law enforcement. And it's true. My opponent is endorsed by the establishment and the unions. But I'm endorsed by the men and women of this community, police, fire, and first responders, and I vow to represent them.
Thank you. Dave, the question number 7 is a little more specifically, how will you support local schools, parks and rec, and police?
Sure. So first, I'll start with the police. And, you know, when I started with the Rocklin Police Activities League with Chris Osborne and Chief Ron Lawrence, it kind of blended a lot of these things in together, right? Because the whole point of it was to counter that narrative that we were seeing against police by the youth, by the media, and what we wanted to do is create an environment where troubled youth were able to come in, work with the police, get out through recreation, okay, and stop causing problems at schools. We continue to this day to do that. I had no idea I was going to be on city council, so I'm not doing any of this because I wanted to be on city council. And the reason that I got the Police Officers Association endorsement has nothing to do with being the establishment. It has to do with the fact that I am prior law enforcement, I am a military veteran, and I've busted my butt for this community for almost an entire decade volunteering. It's really disingenuous to tear another person down for a cheap point. That's not what happened. The firefighters didn't endorse me because they wanted something from me, okay? It's because I've given a lot to this community, and I will continue to do so. I will continue to work for the schools. What will I do for the schools? Here's one thing I'd like to do. By the way, there's what's called a 2x2, okay? It's 2 city council members and 2 members of the school board. Now, we don't know what the election is going to look like, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to call any of them vile. Because I might have to work with them. Sometimes you have to work across the aisle with people that you might not get along, or you might not agree with. But when I'm there, I'm going to be able to work with every single one of them. And I'll tell you this, every single one of them does respect me. I know every single one of them. And I've heard bad things said about all of them. I let the individual show me who they are and not listen to what other people are saying about them. So when I get in there, what I hope to do is get on that 2x2, be able to work with the superintendent and the city manager, and work with our schools. And by the way, I would be the only person on the city council with 2 kids in the schools, one at Cobblestone and one at Rocklin High. So I do think that I would be bringing a very unique experience.
Thank you. Like a 1-minute response? Okay.
Won't take 1 minute. This will be a stark difference between us. I will stand up to those who want to pervert the minds of our kids and teach inappropriate things to 4-year-olds. And I will make no apology about that. That's inappropriate, it's not okay, and I will fight against that. And if that is the thing that's going to decide your vote, let it. You need someone that is going to stand up and advocate for this community, and I said it from the very beginning, who's going to stand up and fight for our faith, our freedom, and our family. That is what I'm going to do.
Thank you. Question number 8, we'll begin with you, Dave. The question is, how will you make Rocklin small business friendly? How will you make Rocklin small business friendly?
Thank you. So I think that being vice chair of the chamber, I've gotten a great experience with seeing exactly where the pain points are throughout the past, I'd say 6 years. It's changed. Obviously, we went through COVID. That was an entirely different pain point than before. Now we're seeing, as we're getting out of COVID, really the issue is going to be fees, especially for our startup businesses, and we want to maintain our competitiveness the best we can. There are a couple things I will say. For example, when we're talking about taxes, is we do have a more competitive sales tax than other places. Roseville is higher, Loomis is higher. We're on par with Lincoln. Let's keep it that way, right? We want to make sure that when people are purchasing, that they're getting the most out of their purchasing power. I will make sure that we are constantly working with the chamber. There's a tremendous funnel of information that comes from the chamber to the city council, and you learn a lot about where those pain points are for particular groups. Like, for example, restaurants during the pandemic. You know, the chamber, the city council reacted very quickly. It was the first to relieve certain regulations out of the entire county to make it so that restaurants were able to operate faster, get out there and open. I represented multiple restaurants against the ABC when they were fighting against them. I will tell you this, for example, that I have gotten the same exact deal that my opponent has gotten for his restaurant, which is the 15-day stayed, no consequence for operating during COVID. If that's beating the governor, then I've beaten him probably way more times than my opponent, probably about 10 times at this point. So those are the things that I'm going to be making sure we're business friendly by fighting, but doing it within the law, and making sure that our businesses are getting the funding that they need when we do go through these pandemics, but more importantly, being responsive to these new fees that we're seeing and finding ways to work with them to make sure that we're decreasing them. But it has to be within the jurisdiction. The city council can only do so much. We have to rely on SP-MUD, PCWA to make some of those changes for us, and we're going to have to, fight with them a little bit and negotiate, but that's a big part of what we're going to need to do moving forward to stay competitive.
Thank you. Matthew, for you, question number 8. How will you make Rocklin small business friendly? How will you make Rocklin small business friendly?
Well, you bring a small business owner onto the city council. I like how we're saying, how do we make Rocklin small business friendly? The question isn't how do we keep Rocklin small business friendly? It's how do we make it? Because the reality is Rocklin isn't small business friendly. It's not even big business friendly. We can't get a Costco to help us. Roseville's going to get 2. Lincoln or Loomis is going to get 1. It's not because we didn't have land. We have empty strip malls and vacant land. We need to drastically reduce fees, cut the red tape, and work to get businesses in. I've been a voice for small businesses for years. When Granite Rock Grill was dealing with the mess of a roundabout that was devastating their business, they didn't call my opponent, a member of the Chamber of Commerce, the vice chair. Well, they reached out to me to help them deal with the mess. And yes, the city didn't like it when they brushed me off and I didn't stay quiet. And then I included the people and gave the people a voice. I held them accountable. Honesty, transparency, and in the end, the voice of the people was heard and changes were made. I want to work to bring small businesses in, and I want to work to keep the ones we have. And to do so, they must feel valued, and they must have a voice.
Thank you. David, give you a 1-minute response.
Sure, it won't take that long. Just to let you know, the chamber did reach out to multiple groups. As a board member, I make sure that we are providing our CEO with the capabilities. She then goes out and makes sure that that contact is being made. Just want to make sure that we all understand where the roles are, and it's not about whether they call me specifically. It's whether the chamber is handling it, and that's the most important thing. Same thing as within the city council. City council members sometimes do not go and do things because it might be the police's job, might be the city manager's job. So in this particular situation, no. Am I going to go to Granite Rock Grill and talk to them because they called me? No, we're going to make sure that the chamber is meeting everybody's needs, whether they're in the chamber or not. And I will say this, I do know that multiple people had talked to every single one of those restaurants, including city council members. It's a complete misrepresentation to say they didn't.
I'll take that 1 minute. I'm not saying that they weren't talked to. In fact, I know they were talked to. They told me. City council talked to me. One of them said the chamber didn't talk to me. I'll give you that name. What they were told was, tough. Deal with it. That's when they reached out to me. It's because they tried to go it. And you know what? I'm tired of excuses being made. Politicians make excuses and excuses and excuses. Why can't we deal with PG&E? Why do we have to raise this tax? Why did you throw a roundabout and shut down my business where no one could enter my business? Well, you know, we did this and we did this, and excuses and a committee, and we'll send someone out and a different person. At the end of the day, I have multiple business. I pastor a church. I have 5 kids, and I still took the time out of my busy schedule to go advocate for the people. And right now what we need is someone who's going to stand up and give a voice to the people. It's our time.
Thank you. I'll give you 1 minute.
You know, I just want to ask you one question. Do you really believe that that's what the city council said? Tough. Do you really believe that that's what the chamber of the CEO, who has given her almost her entire career, you think that's what they said? No. That's the difference. That is the most important thing that separates the two of us. It's truth. And what you are being told and what you're being sold. No one said that. You all know that.
Okay, question number 9. We'll start with you, Matthew. How would you describe your political philosophy? How would you describe your political philosophy?
Got angry all of a sudden. Let's see. My political philosophy: faith, freedom, and family. Right now, I am the true conservative on this stage. While this is a nonpartisan position, I am a registered Republican, and I have been. I am the only candidate in this race endorsed by the Republican Party and the leading Republicans, Kevin Kiley, Joe Patterson, and Bonnie Gore. I'm a fiscal conservative and a small business owner, and I believe that we should not spend more than we bring in. I believe in small government and that decisions should be made on a local level, city council and school boards. And I believe that the role of the local city council is not only to make decisions on the local level, but to advocate on regional, state, and national when necessary. And I am willing to stand and fight for this community.
Thank you. Dave, the question number 9 is, how would you describe your political philosophy?
So, I am the only independent person up here. I answer to no party. Democrat, Republican, I don't care. And I'm going to stay that way because I'm never going to run for anything else because I can't. Okay? No party is going to have me, and I'm not going to have any party. It's just me and this city, and that's it. I'm not going to be told what to do by the Republican Party like it's telling people what to do right now. I was endorsed by Bill Halden. I was endorsed by Roger Nilo. My opponent is trying to get them unendorsed right now for endorsing an independent. We don't need that in our politics. We don't need that. My political philosophy is that local politics is king, because this is what matters to my family. This is what matters to my kids, my mother-in-law, my mom, and the same thing for you. My political philosophy is that the city should worry about protecting property and person, that it should work within its means, but it should provide the very basic services, and should stay out of economic development unless it's absolutely necessary, because we have a free market. I also believe that we need transparency and good government, but that starts with the truth. That starts with telling the truth and not constantly trying to reassure everyone that you're a rebel or that you're the tough guy. We don't need that. We need people that are going to tell the truth and be able to back it up with facts, back it up with those numbers that I'm told put people to sleep. I think finally the most important thing is that we have to expect that no matter what, the decisions that are going to be made for the better of the city, not the better of the Republican Party, not the better of the Democratic Party, and I could care less where you come from. I'm going to listen to you anyways, and I'm not going to try and torpedo you because you're one or the other. My political philosophy is that doesn't matter, and it especially shouldn't matter in local politics. Keep it out.
Thank you. We now come to the 1 minute, okay?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. It's interesting, I've been called the rebel, but the SAC-B was the one that labeled me the rebel, and that's okay. They've called me other things too. When you're talking about truth, one, I have stood up. I'm not beholden. I've stood up. You'll hear rumors. Stood up to the Republican Party, fighting for our conservative values, for honesty and integrity. And when it comes to honesty, and we're giving lists of honesty and being honest, and we want to be honest, one of the things I didn't do was call out Mayor Bill Halden for his dishonesty when he said that he didn't financially support my campaign. And he gave a $50 donation to our campaign. And what's interesting about it is he dishonestly wanted to say, well, I bought a ticket, a $35 ticket. He didn't buy a $35 ticket. He actually didn't buy a ticket at all, oddly. He showed up without buying a ticket, but then made a donation. But you know what he didn't like? Was the fact that I was going to hold him honest, transparent, and others as well.
Thank you. You want 1 minute?
Thanks. Yeah, I understand the city council has been called corrupt. They've accepted bribes. I also understand that in that appreciation of freedom and wanting things to be so much better for everyone, that Mayor Bill Halden's been blocked. And how many people here have actually been, yeah, there we go, blocked, deleted? That's not transparency. That's not having a thick enough skin to be on the city council. That's hiding from the fact that some people can't stand the truth. Yes, I almost said it. I almost said Jack Nicholson's line. I'm not going to do it. The fact is that a $50 donation, a $35 donation, I really ask you to look at that thread, that back and forth between Mayor Halden and Matt. I think it says everything about the entire situation that we're in right now and about transparency and what it means to be a real leader.
I'll take 1 minute to follow with that. The reality is since I endured and was a part of a shooting that took place and had to witness a very close friend murdered in front of me, there have been multiple attacks made on my family, not just me, because I can stand up to most things, but to my wife and my kids. And yeah, there are people, we have those that we're working with that are aggressive and making sure that any threats or attacks on our family, that those are not tolerated. And they've done a really good job, and I appreciate them, and I value that. And right now, in this environment, I'm going to continue to support that because my family, I'm going to fight for my family just as much as I'm going to fight for anybody else's family. But what I do know is this, is that there has been dishonesty and lack of truth for some of our leaders. We need the voice of the people brought back, and we need to hold them accountable.
Thank you. We now come to closing statements. These are 5-minute statements. Matthew, you are going to go first since you went second on the opening statements. So Matthew, your closing statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you again, Dr. John Jackson, the American Council. Thank you for all showing up and caring. There's been an awakening that's taken place over the last few years where we realized more than ever that local politics matter, that our voice matters. Years ago, when some of our restaurant staff came to me and said, we need help, I didn't wait for an election. I didn't wait for an independent review. I didn't wait for someone else. I put it all on the line, my business, my livelihood, my reputation, and I stood for them. I stood up to the governor, his illegal mandates, and his attack on our liberties, and I won. And I just didn't win for me. I won for hundreds of other businesses all throughout Placer County. And that standing turned into standing for our schools, teachers, and parents. That standing turned into standing for our businesses and our community, turned into standing for our first responders, our police, and our fire. That standing turned into standing for you. And I understand we have struggles right now. The struggles of a single mom of two working 2 different jobs, for the family that's struggling to make ends meet, for the first-time home buyer stuck in limbo, or for the college student who wants to live close to home but can't afford a place where he grew up. Let's restore the voice of the people. Let's stand up to the establishment. Let's cut taxes, reduce costs, and let's make Rocklin affordable. Let's keep our green belts green and our beautiful Rocklin beautiful, and not fill every space with building. Let's bring honesty, transparency, and integrity to Rocklin. Let's protect our freedoms, our faith, and our families. This is our city, our future.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. I do appreciate William Jessup and the American Council for putting this on. Just some background is that the impetus of this was because I think that there was a lot of people that wanted to ask a lot of questions. I know we have 150 that we didn't get to. And in this current political world, we have a lot of interest in things that have happened in the past. And I've been bombarded by a select few people that really want to know my opinions on certain things that have nothing to do with the city council. Tonight, we got down to a real discussion between two candidates about what really matters. This is a beautiful night for our democracy and for Rocklin. So thank you to William Jessup. Thank you to the American Council. I have to say the reason I trusted coming in here today was because I knew Dr. Jackson, I know Tanner DeBella, and I know that they respect the process. This is not about the candidates for this night. It's about respecting a process, a democratic process in which you're going to get to select one of two candidates. And some of you have already made up your minds when you came in here. Nobody's mind is going to be changed for the most part. I get that. But I hope that you walk away from this understanding that when you get away from the computer, my opponent and I are human beings. You're all human beings. We both really love Rocklin. And I hope that when everyone goes back, that we have a level of understanding online and that people are a little bit more respectful to each other because we've gotten together and maybe we've seen each other face to face. Okay, I'm here because I have seen so many people in Rocklin who love Rocklin. Yes, there's things we want to change, but it's not this tectonic change that needs to occur. Our council is not corrupt. Okay, we do have problems. We have issues with homeless, but they are not the types of issues that we need to demonize other people for. We just don't. What we do need to do is continue to have conversations with each other and understand each other as human beings. And that's what I am going to do in the city council. I don't care who you are as a Republican or a Democrat. I want to hear your opinion. I'm going to find a way, if your opinion has any shred of basis in reality, because some don't, we're going to work together to meet whatever need that is. I promise I will do that for everyone, even people who don't vote for me. And I know most of the people in here actually believe that because I've done it time and time again. But I do want to close. Thank you so much for having us tonight. And again, I really want to repeat, we're so close to the end of this election. Let's be a lot nicer to each other, because I know it's getting hot and people have a lot of opinions about what's going on. Please, let's just be respectful to each other, and thank you so much for coming out.
You can clap now. On behalf of the American Council and William Jessup University, I want to thank you, the citizens of this community, for being part of this exercise. I believe the candidates may be able to stay for a little bit after for conversation, but would you do one more favor for me? I want to applaud both of our candidates' courages. Their courage for being willing to speak what they understand to be the concerns and the reason for them running. Not one of them would say running was in their calendar as an enjoyable event. It's been a challenging opportunity, but I want to applaud their courage. Would you join me in applauding their courage? Thank you very much. We'll now consider the evening dismissed. Thank you for attending the town hall.